the first really large time, big show that we two were both cast in was the Bebop experience.
Yeah.
And we had no idea how big the show was going to be, but we all agreed. It's so interesting because when we do our Bebop stops and we have all four of us, the main characters, together, I hear more of the history from each other's stories. And so we have decided unanimously that we all thought it was something very special, and we just hoped it would be seen. We didn't know where it would end up. Distribution was very foggy in those days. There was no Cartoon Network. Was there even internet availability?
I don't think so.
So yeah, for a very long time. So we just slipped into these roles, and I know when I saw Faye and she made her first snarky comment, I knew that was my girl. That's just a brief overview of how we all came together.
And I was pretty sure in the very beginning that she was going to swipe my Wulong, so. Yeah, that's kind of the genesis of the show, and we honestly, like she was saying, we had no idea if anybody was ever even going to see the show. Things were coming out on VHS for you youngsters back then. And it was really hard to find copies of things, and everything was super expensive. It's not like you kids have it today. It's so much easier. But I'm so glad that this show really has gotten a new breath of life, and I think it's because of the live action thing. It brought a lot more eyes on it. But after all these years, it's wonderful to see people discovering the show for the first time and loving it as much as we do. So thank you guys. And for those of you who haven't seen it yet, I'm very jealous of you. So, all right, so let's open up to your questions, because I know we don't have an unlimited amount of time here. We should do this.
Perfect.
For what's your guys' thoughts on the live-action Cowboy Bebop?
I've been waiting. Nobody haven't had a question about it yet.
Go for it. Yeah, I'm ready.
Have you had a question?
I have.
Oh, you have? Okay. So I've been waiting for this. It's the first person who has brought up the live action series, and I just want to say it was the little show that I think could have gone on to be a much bigger show. I really felt like it was a beginning of a beautiful thing. I really was genuinely impressed and blown away with the universe and the look and the grit and the tone of the show. And they made all kinds of bold choices, and we may not have agreed with all of them, but they did. They made those choices and they made it amazing. So I was enchanted. I completely enjoyed and relished the experience of every episode. I think it was quite good.
Yeah, just as a fan, I was excited to see anything Bebop again. It was really exciting to see that, and it was, for me personally, it was exciting to see what John Cho did with Spike, because he didn't try to mimic anything I did. He made his own choices there.
The music was amazing, of course. I love that they put it in different places. I don't want to give any spoilers out, of course, but for those of you who haven't seen it, but I think it was worth watching, and I think it was worth making, and I think that they did a great job with it. So kudos to that entire team for doing it, and we're sad that it's not going on for a second season, because I was really hoping we'd get a cameo.
Steve was working on it.
I was working on it so hard. Oh man.
So, did any of our photos end up?
I know for sure that two of our photos made it. Was me and Bo.
On the fridge?
Bo and I were on the fridge.
I didn't see it, but that's what I was hearing.
Yeah, and I think they're probably somewhere else in the show, and nobody's told me yet, but Bo was mad because his picture was upside down.
So Steve had been negotiating cameos, any sort of, like, we really wanted a cantina scene, you know, we wanted to just be in the background or get a line or two would be bonus, but I think we kind of convinced the team to, we're like, please use us. So we sent in a number of photographs that they were gonna work into the show. I can't believe I'm saying this because it was under NDA for so long. And they were going to maybe make wanted posters of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they said they were gonna do. Yeah. I guess it's okay to say that now.
I guess so, it's aired, so yeah.
I don't know, we offered to do anything. I would have been crawling across the floor drunk or something. I really wanted to be one of the old men, this three guys. You didn't do that, you idiot. I would have loved it, because now I'm that age, I can pull that off. Yeah, thank you very much.
It's one of my favorite anime of all time. It's like, I love your other stuff too, like especially Steve Blum as the great Tom from Toonami.
Thank you. Only Toonami on Adult Swim. We're on tonight. Watch it.
is, I guess, mainly centered towards Wendee Lee, because, so in the finale, which I'm not going to say all the spoils and stuff of the finale, just in case people have, like, and I'm talking the original anime, not the live action, like the finale of the original anime. One thing that has kind of been on my mind is that, you know, we get closure for quite a few of the characters in Cowboy Bebop, you know, like Ed and Ein, they go off on their own across the ruins of Earth and stuff, and Spike, well, spoilers. But one thing that kind of made me a little dissatisfied is that we don't really get too much closure for Faye and Jet. And so I'm kind of wondering, like, what your guys' take on that is, like, what happened to Faye and Jet after, you know, the ending of Cowboy Bebop. Because, you know, I wanted to hear it from the, you know, voice actors themselves of how they think their stories continued, because we never really got that at the end of the anime.
Well, at the end of the series, the live action series, there's a sequence of Faye and Jet separating. And I wondered if it was almost an attempt to answer that question. It didn't seem like it was a final parting per se. It did suggest that they left amicably, but I always expected we would get into Faye's maturity, like where she would go in her 30s and 40s. I was really interested in exploring that, even though she was over 77 years old, technically.
I mean, the cryogenics, you know, it's the semantics.
But I was always interested in that open question. What would Faye make of her life experience later after she burned out from her rebel years or mellowed to some degree with her life experience? So I'm not sure, but it feels like the roots were laid deep and perhaps there would be an ongoing connection. I would hope. So I'm not going to fill in all the blanks on that. I'm not sure. What's your take?
I remember I was in the line and I was talking with a fellow fan, like, in line, and we were talking about, oh, would Faye and Jet, like, work together or stuff, or would they separate? And, like, the person I was talking to basically said there was so much, like, emotional baggage from, you know, Spike's, spoilers,
Yes.
That it'd be hard for them to stay together, so they would probably part ways. Like, Faye would probably leave the Bebop and go on her own, probably doing her own, you know, back what she was doing before, like, before she met, like, the crew, the Bebop, of just kind of, you know.
I feel like she would have taken those experiences and parlayed them into the next act for herself. But yeah, those are sort of open-ended questions that the series presents often.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, also, can I get a bang from both of you?
Bang.
Dang it, Bobby!
Hi, so this is touching a little bit on things that Wendee talked about at her panel yesterday as well. You mentioned how it was really difficult to break into directing as a woman on Power Rangers, and then you mentioned that Cowboy Bebop was directed by Mary McGlynn. You directed Outlaws Star, Fushigi Yugi was being directed by Bridget Hoffman.
Yes.
Did you find it was easier to be accepted into directorial roles in anime? Was that community more open to female directors, or was it a struggle there as well?
You know, it's really interesting. That was the moment when it did feel like it opened up, at least for anime female directors. There just hadn't been a lot of women on the scene, except initially when I started at Intersound in Hollywood, the house that was doing so many international dubs. They were doing a lot of Indonesian films, lots of stuff that was difficult to voice and watch. A lot of violence, a lot of non-consensual stuff going on. But, you know, a girl's gotta start somewhere. They brought in a lot of content, and that whole division was headed by a woman called Bird. I forgot her last name, but this amazing woman, powerhouse. And then I didn't encounter that again for a couple decades, to be honest, until we kind of kicked the doors open at that moment when we had those 4 shows running by women. And also Leah Sargent was directing quite a bit. So yeah, and really that comes from Kevin Seymour, and like I always say, his love of women and punk female bands. I mean, he just loved, he loved and appreciated women in rock and roll so much, and I think he was bridging some of that and bringing that into anime. And then years later, when I got into more original animation and prelay, almost all of the fantastic directors are female, at least in Hollywood in the animation proper scene, so with American animation. So the two worlds are kind of coming together in a way, and I think we're seeing a huge growth spurt in our industry for equality in general. I think we're branching out in many directions and embracing diversity and non-binary characters and ethnicities in a way that we haven't in the past. And over the last couple years through remote, I've been teaching again and working with a lot of students, and I'm now seeing a representation of the planet in my classes, of the country, of all worlds and ethnicities, and I just keep telling everybody this is the right time to jump in. This is where we really want to bring, a rainbow of options of ethnicity and choices to everything that we do. So I feel like the arts is always the first group of people that ushers in those changes, and I'm really proud to be a part of that.
All right, sorry, can I ask like a small follow-up? So like the series that we mentioned, that was the era that I got into anime. I also, looking back historically, that was also kind of the first era where anime was in being licensed, that was opening up to things for girls.
Yeah.
Do you think that the growing openness to female directors was related to that openness to looking to attracting female audiences?
Wow, that's a good point. I was gonna say no, because I think that Japan was more open to girl power and friendship, friends forever, and just sort of bringing women into more leading roles. I think Japan kicked the doors open in many ways for superheroes and magical teenagers that save the planet. Not a thing we hear of ever. Sailor Moon and Magic Knight Ray Earth. There were several other shows, but yay. But that girl power, that camaraderie of lifting each other up instead of shredding each other, like very typical stereotypes for anime tend to be women can be very catty. I just ran across a film last night, Mean Girls, and looking at it, I couldn't even watch it. It was just like so cruel how everybody was treating each other, and I think that the trend is the opposite. I don't think it's coming from the US, I think it's more from Japan in that way, but I have been hired a couple times to head shows because they were female-centric and they really wanted a female director. So that's exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
So I'm usually asked of really stupid questions, so I'm just going to go ahead and ask this, and stop me if you've heard this before. I imagine at a certain point, when your careers were just beginning, there was a certain point where everything kind of exploded in a good way. So I wanted to ask, what exactly was that like, going through that as voice actors and actresses alike? What exactly was that like?
Kicking in.
For me, it was kind of a slow burn. I never noticed a moment that things really exploded because it's cyclical.
Right.
And it's still that way. 30 plus years in, it's still cyclical like that. So I think that the challenge more for me personally was really to ride out the low times. And so in those moments, it was really hard just to stay strong and know that the cycle will continue and it'll be my time again. But the big breakthroughs, when they do happen, of course, it's an exhilarating ride. But learning from that other experience, I try not to get too lost in that because I do know that it can change at any moment. But what I would suggest is if you're doing this in any career, really, if you're having a good moment in any career, just savor those moments and hold on to that. And remember that when it does get quieter, that you do have worth every moment of every day for your entire life.
Steve's really addressing the mental wellness of being an actor, and this difficult ride that we go on is such a roller coaster, and we often find people that come into voice acting without going through sort of the actor's journey which in a way is Steve's experience. He really comes from music and performing in bands on stage. And when you don't have that background of pounding the pavement and trying and being rejected constantly, you don't have that muscle built up for rejection later in life when you have experienced a lot of great uplifting days and suddenly work dries up. We're completely freelance. We have no job security whatsoever. We have no given insurance plan or pension or otherwise unless we're working and contributing to those programs. So there's always this sense of, and I was just speaking about this yesterday, this sense of my last job is it. I'm never gonna work again. I went through probably 15, 20 years of that, thinking, that's it. And that's when I leaned on my friends outside of work. You really need a wholeness in your life where your whole identity doesn't revolve around what you do, but who you are. And your village reflects back to you who you really are and is your sounding board. And it was my friends that would say, oh, you're in another one of those cycles. Okay, you're gonna work again, just relax, you know? And after a while, I could trust that. I would just say, tell me I'm gonna be okay. Things are gonna be fine, right? And they're like, absolutely. So yeah, it's really easy to relish the wonderful bits and you quickly forget about the hardships. But I think for Steve and I, we're very integrated with gratitude. That gratitude has guided so much of what we've received and then tried to share with you all in the world.
I can tell you, as someone who works in software engineering that does have like insurance coverage, I go through the same thing. Yeah. You end up kind of being high-strung and thinking that you're not really worth anything the moment you lose your job for whatever reason, especially for contracting. You just wake up unemployed one day. You did kind of answer my second question, but I did want to ask kind of a tiny follow-up. I imagine a number of people in this room are going to be going out and getting back in line for the intro to voice acting panel that's going to be taking place in here. What advice would you have for the mental wellness part / going on the actor's journey? Because I think in a lot of those classes that's not really covered. It's just how do you get first job?
Yes.
That was what my entire class structure was built on. At bloomvoxstudios.com. I didn't want to teach. That terrified me. I had to deconstruct 30 years of doing what I do. I didn't come from a teaching background, but the very first thing that I wanted to impart was the thing that kept me healthy through this entire journey, which really was maintaining that sense of balance inside and outside. And like Wendee had just mentioned, gratitude was really the foundational element. If you are considering becoming a voice actor or an artist or doing anything, when the grind gets tough, when you are in the trenches and you are doing the work and it sucks, and a lot of it sucks, just remember, if you just change this one phrase, that instead of saying that I have to do something, I have to do the audition, I have to do these exercises, I have to study, remind yourself that it's a choice that you get to. And if you do that, it can change your entire life. It changes your entire perspective on life, and it changes your relationships with everybody you know too. Because you don't have to do anything. You can lay down and sleep for your life away. You can do drugs. You can, there's a million different things that you can do. Everything is a choice. So that would be the first thing I would impart to you. The second thing that I would say is if you're considering getting into voice acting or any kind of performance entertainment, I would recommend that you do it because you love the craft, the art form that you're choosing. Whatever that art form is, you have to love it enough to be willing to do everything it takes to provide you the vehicle to do that thing. So do what you love, do everything else you have to do to support that.
Thank you guys for all you do. Thank you for everything that you imparted, and thank you for your impact on this industry.
Thank you.
I wish if we had a script, we would do that at a heartbeat.
The lines that we just did.
What were they? I love the kind of woman that can kick my ass.
Have you ever met your Japanese counterparts?
I have not.
Would you like to?
No.
I mean, given the chance. Would you meet him for like a panel?
That would be amazing to meet them.
I would have loved that. That would have been amazing.
I got to meet the girl who played Haruhi Suzumiya. I did a live event with her in Long Beach for a convention that we did for Anime Expo many years ago. We did a big live show, and she had her band there, and it was really a cool thing. But other than that, I've never met a VO counterpart, a Japanese counterpart.
I got to meet the guy who did Spike in Mexico. That was pretty fun.
Was he deep?
He was deep. Yeah, he was a really young guy, but he had a deeper pitch to his voice.
I love that.
But to hear that dialogue in Spanish was really cool.
It was so beautiful, yeah.
Yo quiero.
Space and cowboy.
All right, so I just want to start with a quick preface. If Mary Elizabeth McGlynn were here, I would have complimented her right away, telling her she perhaps made the greatest English dub in an anime I've ever heard.
I will tell her tonight. I will tell her that you said that.
Yeah. Now, my question for both of you, which can be easily answered quickly, what is your favorite episode of Cowboy Bebop?
Yeah. We get this a lot.
We do. You go.
I love Speak Like a Child. I get to get information about a character, that is just a rich resource of knowledge that I never have experienced with a character arc before. I love Mushroom Samba. And I think Toys in the Attic is sort of the one that we get to perform live, a live reading of a lot, so it's very special to me as well.
I concur with all that, but I also love the Cowboy Bebop movie. Because I felt that had all of the elements, the best elements of the show, and the music and the action. It was amazing.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of a toss-up between Ballad of Fallen Angels and the two-part Real Folk Blues. But if I had to pick one, Ballad of Fallen Angels, because when I rewatch it, I realize all the foreshadowing that connects to everything. Like, it's actually brilliant when you revisit.
You're right.
Yeah. And I also want to sign off asking the audience, have you found paradise in Sakura-Con?
I think they have. She blissed out. Yeah. Hi.
Hey, so what's like a dream project that you'd like to work on in the future, like, or a character or anything like that?
Whatever I'm working on Monday, because I'm still employed.
Wow, I would love to do something really airy-fairy, metaphysical, dealing with like deeper spiritual things, like really get into something with a heavy message. And if it featured archaeoastronomy, is my big hobby field of studying Earth's monuments and the ancient records of the timeline of history and how that keeps moving back deeper and deeper. And actually, Outlaw Star kind of dealt with some of that and the ley lines of the planet and harnessing those energies and really a free energy future, really based on Earth's properties and natural magnetics. That would be an amazing thing. Yeah.
A Miyazaki film.
Signing a film for us. That's all.
Or anything I could record from a hammock.
So, I've watched both versions of Bebop, just Japanese and English, but the version that I always remember and will always remember are the roles that you two played.
Oh, what do you think makes it memorable between one version and the other?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
That's really hard to define. I think it's taste, and I think it's a cultural thing too. Bebop was so deeply rooted in American culture that I think that it made it more palatable for an American audience. I think that's why the American audience accepted it as maybe their gateway anime. The music, the look, the feel of it felt familiar because it was drawn from spaghetti westerns and from film noir and jazz and all of our roots that we're comfortable with. I think that's what initially got everyone interested. Once it went back to Japan, once it became successful here, because it wasn't very successful there in the beginning, they realized that all the things that they loved about American culture were present in the net, and they kind of gave it a second look, and they probably took our performances as something that may have been more authentic to that culture. That's my version of that anyway, I think.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's why we all, as a cast, had such instant connection, and it had such wide appeal for us, because it really was more of a Western, as far as audiences go, driven show. And that's right, it wasn't as popular in Japan as it was with the West. But I think that the voice signatures between the two languages are memorable for in their own way, equally, but for different reasons perhaps. I know that the Faye Japanese voice artist really found Faye crude and offensive when she first saw her, and to me, she was rock and rollin' hot. Like I just thought, I know this girl from being backstage at many shows. I've seen this girl in action, and I know how she works and operates, and I could just slip right into those go-go boots.
Thank you.
Interesting question, thank you.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask the question you literally just answered. So I just thought of this question like the past 20 seconds. How do you feel about the awesome lo-fi beats that have come out sampling your voices from Cowboy Bebop?
I think it's pretty cool, honestly. No, I think anything that is taken and used in small legal doses to up level and get it to a different audience, get it on different ears is a great thing. I've worked with Logic, the hip hop guy, and he brought a lot of the anime and video game
3D guy.
Pardon me?
The Super Saiyan, Stereo Saiyan 3D guy.
Yes. He brought an awareness of anime and video games into the hip hop world that may not have existed before, people were afraid to talk about before. Anime fans and hip hop fans just didn't meet until Logic made it okay for them. So anytime that kind of stuff happens, I feel like it connects people, and I think that's a good thing.
And if I could recommend my favorite lo-fi hip-hop beat, it's You're Gonna Carry That Weight. I don't know if you guys heard it, but it's great.
Yeah, nice, thank you. I have. Hi.
Hello. So you've already answered the what is your favorite line from Cowboy Bebop, but watching the anime, I had a lot of impactful lines that hit me that meant something to me more than just watching an anime. It was almost like a life affirming thing. I wonder if you guys have your favorite, one of those where when you read the line or the dialogue, that it hit you differently than just than just a regular line.
I recently, my husband actually Robert had the anime running one night when he was waiting for me to come join him and have a proper Save the Marriage movie night. We make time for the marriage, you have to remember that. And so he started playing Bebop, and I'm hearing it in the room, and I come running in, he's like, I knew that would get you. And it was this deep conversation with Spike and Faye, and she was really emotional, and she was holding a gun and kept shooting and missing on purpose, but it was this deep why are you leaving, what's going on, and it's just the longing between them all came back to me, and that it became very fresh again, how there was this deep love and understanding that I think was always at the core of their relationship, and I think it always had potential to be more than that. But there was Julia. And I just remembered how good the psychological struggles were and the messages, and so I couldn't pick any one per se, but that moment really brought it all back to me, and it felt super fresh again, how it just was really, it was more intelligent adult dialogue, and it wasn't just serving a setup for a fight sequence, it was deep, much deeper psychologically than that, and that felt very satisfying to hear.
Yeah, in the moment when we were recording it, it didn't really land on me, because I think I was just so nervous about recording at the time. I was fairly new and scared all the time. But 20-something years later, rewatching it, end to end, it was that same scene actually. And I remember watching that, and when Spike said the words, I think it was, I'm not going there to die, I'm going there to find out if I'm really alive. That just hit me in all the feels, and it was a really powerful moment. They were so both damaged they could never really admit that love for one another or respect, but they were this family that kind of helped each other through all of their wounds, and there was some healing that had happened that had to take place for them to get to that point where they could say goodbye. So that's really tough, and that revisited in my mind. My father passed away last year. And when I was letting him go, I just basically saying it was time, it was time for him to go. but I felt like our connection on this planet together was complete. We had done what we needed to do in this lifetime, and it was okay to let him go. And for me, that's what that moment represented, and it was powerful as hell. And it helped me through that. And who knew from a cartoon that I would be feeling that, you know? So
I just find that great. That's literally the scene I was talking about when I asked that question.
Yeah.
That YouTube, that's awesome.
yeah, thank you.